of the berm or shoulder. In the event a highway includes two or more separate roadways, the term roadway shall refer to any such roadway separately, but not to all such roadways collectively. Defendants Exhibit 34, Official Code of Georgia 40-6-96, pedestrians on or along the roadway. Subsection A, as used in this code section, the term pedestrian means any person afoot and shall include without limitation persons standing, walking, jogging, running, or otherwise on foot. Subsection B, where a sidewalk is provided, it shall be unlawful for any person to stand or stride along and upon an adjacent roadway unless there is no motor vehicle travel within 1,000 feet of such pedestrian on such roadway, or the available sidewalk presents an imminent threat of bodily injury to such pedestrian. Subsection C, where a sidewalk is not provided but a shoulder is available, any pedestrian standing or striding along and upon a highway shall stand or stride only on the shoulder as far as practicable from the edge of the roadway. Subsection D, where either a sidewalk nor a shoulder is available, a pedestrian standing or striding along and upon a highway shall stand or stride as near as practicable to the outside edge of the roadway, and if on a two-lane roadway, shall stand or stride only on the left side of the roadway. The further subsections, I don't believe are applicable. Do you want me to read it?
Whatever you think is best.
Subsection 16-743 of Georgia law, littering public or private property or waters, the pertinent subsections. Subsection A, it shall be unlawful for any person to dump, deposit, throw, or leave, or to cause or permit the dumping, depositing, placing, throwing, or leaving of litter on any public or private property in this state or any waters of this state, unless the area is designated by the state or by its agencies or political subdivisions for the disposal of litter, and the person is authorized by the proper public authority to use such area, or unless the litter is placed into a non-disposable litter receptacle or container designed for the temporary storage of litter and located in an area designated by the owner or the tenant in lawful possession of the property. Georgia, Official Code of Georgia, Statute 16-10-24, obstruction or hindering law enforcement officers. Pertinent sections, subsection A, a person who knowingly and willfully obstructs or hinders any law enforcement officer in the lawful discharge of his or her official duties shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Subsection B, whoever knowingly and willfully resists, obstructs, or opposes any law enforcement officer in the lawful discharge of his or her official duties by offering or doing violence to the person of such officer shall be guilty of a felony. Thank you, Judge. Mr. Schaefer? Or Pierce?
Judge, our next witness is going to be Dr. Darrell Ross. However, he's going to be a rather lengthy witness. I know we're early. You might want to ask if you wanted to take a quick break.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to, the defendants are calling a witness who will be testifying in a moment. As you just heard, it's going to be expected to take some time. Does anyone want a break at this point? I know we haven't been here this long, but if you do, raise your hand and we'll take it. All right, let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll come back and start hearing the testimony. We're in recess for 10 minutes.
Is this Darrell Ross in the courtroom?
It is.
We had invoked the rule, was the 911 call part of the materials you provided for him to review?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't have any problem with that.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed?
Yeah,
Waiting on Mr. Copeland, Your Honor.
Okay.
yeah. I'm sorry?
Do you have any issue with him sitting in there?
For this portion? I do. He doesn't need to hear this, does he? I mean, has he seen these materials? Are they part of his prep?
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
Your Honor, what we're discussing is one of our other experts is here for the day. We're discussing about whether the state would have a problem with him appearing, with him sitting in the courtroom during Dr. Ross's testimony. I think previously we had discussed having our experts available to view other testimony, and at the time, there was no objection to that. I just wanted to clear it up with Mr. Lipscomb to see if that was still the case.
If it's, if this is something he needs to hear as part of his opinion, yes, but otherwise I would ask that the rule, that's been invoked be respected.
What, is that the situation? Is this information that the subsequent witness would be using and referencing in his testimony?
Not knowing what Dr. Ross has testified to, I can't really answer that. I know that they have reviewed some of the same materials, but I could not tell you if they're going to testify on the same subjects or reach any of the same conclusions.
All right, the rule is in place, so we'll leave it in place for this witness as well, unless there's, and if you need to speak with your witness first, unless there's some compelling reason that the witness would need to be here to be able to fully answer his questions, then certainly I'll reconsider it.
If we could just have 5 minutes
Sure.
to request, because I'd rather get you that answer than send it soon.
That's fine, go ahead. You can be seated unless something further we need to discuss.
That's his curriculum. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Your Honor, conferring with our expert, Dr. Kroll, he said there's nothing about Dr. Ross's testimony that he absolutely needs to hear.
All right, then
He's been instructed to remain outside the courtroom.
the rule will remain in effect then. Everyone ready for the jury?
Yes.
All right, bring the drawers out, please. You may be seated. The defendant may call, or defendants may call their next witness.
Defense calls Dr. Daryl Ross.
Hello. Just come around and you can remain standing there.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear that testimony and evidence in this case that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Let's see, please. Slide up to that microphone.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir, I'd like you to state and spell your name for the record.
Daryl Lee Ross, Darrell Leeross. Well, after 52 years, I retired from Valdosta State University as a professor and department head of the sociology and criminal justice program there. So I'm retired as a professor emeritus from Valdosta State University as of July 24, 2024.
You're still holding privileges at Valdosta State, is that right?
I do.
You still do research at Valdosta State?
I do.
And I want you to describe your training experience in law enforcement first.
Training experience or just experience in general?
Let's start with just your experience in general.
Okay.
You were employed in the 70s.
Yes, I started out in 1973 as a corrections officer at the State Prison of Southern Michigan in Jackson, Michigan. I was a corrections officer, went through all the training to be a corrections officer. I worked for the last year there, 4 years as an officer in a specialized protective mental health unit. I got my degree from Michigan State University, and then I was promoted to the supervisor of the largest cell block in the Michigan penal system at the time, which contained 500 mentally ill prisoners. And I supervised that with 3 psychiatrists, 2 assistants, and I think I had 16, 17 corrections officers at the time. So I worked there for a period of time and then got promoted to a probation officer within the Department of Corrections in Michigan. And then I was promoted to the training department, where I worked in the Corrections Academy in the training unit for 4 years before leaving there in 1985. That was the Michigan penal system for about 12 to 13 years.
So 74 to 85.
Yes, sir. 73.
73. So in the middle of that, you earned your bachelor's degree from
Yes, and then on with my master's degree from Michigan State in criminal justice.
both of them in criminal justice?
Yes.
Okay. And after 1985, go ahead and detail your either teaching or educational experience.
From 1985 till 2024, I was in higher education. I taught part-time while I was getting a master's degree at Ferris State University, Ferris, which had not only a baccalaureate degree for students that wanted to get their degree in criminal justice, but it also had a police academy. And in the last 2 years of their training, of their education, it was combined. They could get their degree and then their post-certifiable police certification. And I taught in that program for 7 years while working on my PhD at Michigan State University. All 3 of my degrees are from Michigan State University. Once I received my PhD, I went on to East Carolina University in 1992 and worked there from 1992 to 2006, or excuse me, 2010, or yeah, no, let's go back, 2006. And I taught criminal justice courses, did research, was promoted all the way up, got tenure, got all the way to professor, and then became the department head for about 5 or 6 years there. I helped started the master's program in criminal justice while I was there. In 2010, I left East Carolina University and became the department head, the director for the justice program at Western Illinois University. I was there for 4 years, and I was in charge of that program. We had 5 extension sites. We had about 2,500 students in criminal justice with extension sites and a master's degree program, where I also taught, but primarily my job was department head administrative as well as teaching. And I continued to research all throughout and publish at every institution that I was at. And then from 2010, I moved to Valdosta, Georgia, and was the, like I said, the chair of the program from 2010 until 2024.
And let's go back to your correctional officer and probation officer experience. You not only studied, obviously, you studied and taught criminal justice and law enforcement issues, but you lived it on a day-to-day basis when you were in the Department of Corrections. Give the jury kind of a slice of everyday life of a correctional officer as you experience it.
Well, my job might have been a little bit different because this was a maximum security institution. It housed 5,500 prisoners at the time, and it has specialized units. That had a behavioral modification unit. It had a specialized mental health unit, which I ultimately became charge of. But starting out as a corrections officer, I went through the academy, and it wasn't very long back in those days. I actually learned a lot of my job on the job, my duties on the job with prisoners, for if you can believe that. But because everybody wanted a safe environment, safe institution. But I did custodial duties, making rounds, making cell checks, custodial types of activities and duties, patrolled the yard, patrolled the gun turrets. I did transport prisoners to court. I did transport prisoners back and forth to various other institutions, to the hospital, in and outside the institution. When I became the resident unit manager, the supervisor, I had to have special training to not only do that particular job, but because it was a special housing unit of mental health, I had about 7 weeks of additional mental health training in order to be able to supervise the officers as well as the prisoners, and working with the prison psychologists and psychiatrists. So a lot of my job was security. We did shakedowns, we did personal searches, we secured and kept the institution safe, not only for the prisoners that were there, but for the officers and personnel and professional nursing staff that was there, mental health staff, and others that worked in the institution. So I did a cadre of a lot of things as an officer and as a supervisor.
So your probably experience might have mirrored that of other law enforcement officers, as every day might have been unpredictable.
Very unpredictable, particularly in the special housing unit that I worked in. There was never one day that was the same.
And I'm going to show you what I have marked as Defense Exhibit number 41. I've showed this to the state.
That has been provided to me, and I have no objection.
What's the number again?
Number 41.
41.
Take a look at that, please. You tell the jury what that is.
Yes, this is my current curriculum vitae, or known as CV, long for a resume. It's 51 pages. Yes, it's the one I submitted to you. Yes, sir.
Complete as of this month?
Yes, the only thing I would add, or just correct, I think I have it here. On page 13 of the CV, the very top, November 2025, I say, I write, I'm on the program to present training. I actually did complete that training last week in Las Vegas on officer arrest-related deaths and post-restraint monitoring and incident documentation.
Let's take a tangent. Can I see that, please? So, is it complete? Are there any additions or deletions other than what you mentioned there?
No, sir.
I will offer Defense Exhibit number 41 in evidence, Judge.
Same as admitted without objection.
I'm not going to publish this to the jury right just yet, because I'd like them to listen to Dr. Ross, what Dr. Ross has to say. Dr. Ross, you mentioned that you were in Las Vegas last week
Yes.
for a conference for arrest-related death. Do you want to just detail exactly what you were teaching?
Yes, this was for the Institute for the Prevention of In-Custody Deaths. It was their 20th anniversary. I have been teaching for them since 2017. I've been doing a lot of research in this particular area, and what we mean by prone restraint related death, or actually arrest-related death that's temporal and not associated with what the officer did or didn't do. But it is a program that has been geared and focused and designed to talk about police officers' response to combative and violent individuals, whether out in the street, during an arrest confrontation or a call, and/or in a jail or a prison setting. And it involves not only practitioners who have studied this as myself, it also includes legal attorneys that come in and talk about the liability and legal issues that are involved in these particular use of force and related death situations, as well as medical doctors. There's numerous medical doctors, pulmonologists, and emergency room doctors, and cardiologists, and pharmacologists, because sometimes these individuals are high on various types of illicit drugs or psychotropic medication, or haven't been taking that as far as that goes. So it's a cadre, a combination, a constellation of various types of backgrounds and research and individuals who've had experience with this to come together collectively to discuss and present research and information to individuals who work as police officers, who work as corrections officers, who work as sheriffs and chiefs and administrators in these facilities, and/or at state police or at law enforcement departments or agencies that oftentimes have to develop training for their officers, policies for their officers, tactical concerns for their officers when dealing with an individual that they may come in contact with or encounter in these kind of confrontations.
You've commonly done this nationwide, is that right, over the course of your career?
Oh, yes, for over 35, almost 40 years, yes, sir.
And a lot in Georgia as well, is that correct?
I have done some of the topics that we presented last week and additional. While I was at Valdosta, I became a Georgia Post, that's a police officer standards and training certified instructor, so that I could instruct and get certification for instructing in Georgia. And as a result of that, I provided a lot of free training at Valdosta State University for the whole state of Georgia, for chiefs, for sheriffs, for the GBI, for state patrol, state police, as well as the northern part of Florida. We would get, because Valdosta, as you may know, is 22 miles from the Florida line, so we would get personnel officers and administrators coming from North Florida. In fact, I've been down to Florida doing this type of training as well over the years. But we held various types of arrest-related deaths and liability. I've published for the 8th edition my liability book in civil liability in criminal justice. And so a lot of my cases that I get to work on and that I research are in the book, and then it falls into my training that I do because I believe the officers need to have the training, and that's about what I've been doing, here and throughout Georgia, as well as speaking at the Georgia Chiefs of Police Conference. For about 3 years in a row, I trained almost every chief of police in the state at their conference, as well as the campus police chiefs. They have their own separate conference, and this was primarily on use of force issues, liability issues, and to some extent on these arrest-related deaths, as well as risk management types of topics.
So we know you've written one book, have you written others? Chapters and others?
5 books, and I've published 5 books, and numerous book chapters, probably 22 book chapters / monographs that are incorporated with that over the years.
Slice of the topics that you've written about in those books or chapters.
Well, primarily, I have tried to focus on use of force issues, coming out of corrections, training corrections officers on the use of force, on an empty hand control techniques and techniques for takedown and use of restraints. And then when I was at Ferris State University, I also taught as a certified defensive tactics, subject control techniques instructor by the state there at the academy. So based on my certifications and my interest in use of force, it has primarily focused my research and publications on the use of force, but also on liability issues that are associated with that. How officers may be sued for using alleged excessive force, and what does the law say about it? What does the Constitution say? What does the United States Supreme Court or other judicial decisions? And so that becomes part of my writings and my research. So I have the civil liability book that is in its 8th edition. 2023 was its last edition. So my focus has been on that, Then, with my background, I was also, if I may, for about 31, 32 years, I was the director of research for the Pressure Point Control Tactics Corporation, PPCT, which is based out of St. Louis, Missouri. And as that, it was at that time the world's largest use of force training organization. We trained not only officers in the United States, but internationally. I've trained in Taiwan and I've trained in Hong Kong. I've trained other folks that have come from various Canada, the UK, Australia to come to the United States. I've trained them as well for about 30, almost 35 plus years. But my point in mentioning that is being part of that organization, the director of research, was when I first became involved in the late 80s, early 90s about arrest-related deaths. So in 2006, Dr. Ted Chan and myself, who was a physician in San Diego, he and I, along with other medical personnel and researchers, wrote one of the first books on sudden deaths in custody, and that's one of our books that came out in 2006. And then in 2018, because I've been involved with reviewing a lot of these cases and training on this, we decided to publish a book with Dr. Gary Vilk and about 16 other co-authors on how to investigate officer-involved shooting cases as well as these arrest-related deaths. And I've written a book on Introduction to Corrections, and also the other book is Correctional Liability, legal issues that impact jailers and corrections officers. Those are the five.
Just writing all of these books and then they're just being published. They're actually being back tested by other experts. Is that right?
Yes, and it's interesting you mention that because from time to time, you never know what you may publish, an article, research, or a book. Is somebody going to read this or not? And frequently I get calls or I see people at conference. In fact, last week I had about 5 or 6 mention, and they said, we've used your book at our police department. We've used it to design our training curriculum in our police department. I've had other experts come and say, I've used your research and your books to help write my opinions report in a case that I'm serving as an expert witness in. I know many departments that have used my civil liability book as a promotional text. So an officer wants to be promoted to sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, and many departments have used the book as part of their promotional exam process.
And so you're what's called peer reviewed, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you've got many of your publications, whether they be books, or journal articles, or research, are what's called peer reviewed. Is that correct?
That's correct. About 80% of those. Peer review means that if a researcher, a scientific researcher, a scientist, researcher, publisher, would do a study and would use, let's say, some statistics or qualitative types of analysis of data, would write up the article, and they want that individual, like myself, wanted to get it published in a kind of a top-rated journal. You submit the article, and they have a review process of editors. It's blind. They don't know who I am, and obviously I don't know who's reviewing my work to see if I followed statistical research properly, if I've followed protocols, methodologies properly, to have them review it, to actually publish it in their journal. And sometimes they will send it back, and the reviewers, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, will say, we want to publish your article, but you need to go back and resubmit it and revise this section, or rework this particular, or make this more clarified in a particular portion. So you go back and do that's called revise and resubmit, or they can just. I've had articles that were totally rejected as well. No, early on it did, back in the late 80s and 90s, but I haven't had that problem in many years. So it's a peer review. It's to keep it pure, to keep it scientific, to keep it above board, and to make sure you follow proper protocol in submitting your particular article and research project.
I want to talk to you about, or I want you to talk to the jury about your experience with Taser or electronic control devices.
Okay. I was a Taser instructor by Axon, AXON, out of Scottsdale, Arizona. In 2018, I've since let that elapse when it was good for 2 years. And then COVID came along in 2020 and so forth. And I had some other medical issues, so I let that lapse. But I've never trained the Taser as the product, but I have also trained about it in all of my courses. I've trained about how it works, when it's justifiable under the law, to when an officer can justifiably use it, under what kind of situations. I've helped assisted departments write policy and training curriculum on that particular product, on the Taser. It depends on which Taser you're talking about, because they keep evolving and evolving and moving up to different types of designs in the manufacturer Axon. I think it's the T10, yeah, T10, yes.
That's the one that has 10 different probes.
Yes, it does.
Probes at one person.
That's right. And
Is there increasing the number of probes?
that's right.
Have you yourself been tased?
Yes, I have numerous times. Yes, I have numerous times. Now, additionally, beyond the Taser, you said electrical devices. In the last 2 years, I've become the director of research and on the advisory board for compliant technologies, and the product that is being sold and manufactured and trained to police officers called the Glove. It is the generated low output emitter. It's actually a glove that is used that has low level voltage, a lot less lower than a Taser, and it touches the skin, and it helps the officer overcome resistance. And so about the last 2 years, I'm an instructor, an international master instructor for that company, and I've been continuing to do training around the country on that particular product as well.
You've been tased both with in probe mode and in drive stun mode, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. With this glove, you probably experienced that.
Just a training glove, because I don't like to say my medical, but I have a pacemaker, so I can't use that glove on me personally. But I have used a training glove, which has less emitting of voltage.
Have you testified before as an expert?
Oh, yes, I have.
Okay. About how many times?
Testified in court live.
Testified as an expert witness in any type of case, whether that's a court or a deposition?
Well, I've been doing this since 1988. I think I'm over 1,000 cases. Not all of those go to court, not all of those go to a deposition. But for example, this last year I've taken 3 depositions in cases that I've worked on. And my area, I'm pretty narrow in my focus of what I opine on or what I review, primarily use of force, officer-involved shootings, particularly in these types of arrest-related deaths with various devices, whether it's in the street or in a prison or jail. And I also have testified, worked on cases, I should say, on jail suicides, prison assaults, custodial assaults, custodial deaths. Now, they may not all be from the use of force. It could be someone who has an overdose, who has a medical condition, has heart disease, has a heart attack, and died in custody, either on the street or in the jail or the confinement, the prison setting.
And you've been qualified as an expert witness in both state and federal courts around the country, is that right?
Yes, sir?
And your services aren't free, are they?
No, they're not.
We pay you to be an expert witness in this case, is that right?
That's correct.
So, do we pay you based on any particular result we want you to give?
Oh, no.
Okay. And you get paid more if you give a result that we want.
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, sir.
And what is your hourly rate?
$4.50 an hour plus expenses.
Okay. And do you have any idea about how many hours you've billed so far in this case?
I haven't billed anything, but I think I've worked now 20 to 25 hours on this case.
That was recently, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But over the life of this case?
Oh, $25,000, I would say, over the life of this case, since 2019.
We've been working for some time.
Yes, sir.
Right. And I want to talk a little bit about the methodology that you use to review these types of cases. Is it the same method as you
Yes, and to be specific, I use primarily two methodologies, a content analysis. And a content analysis is an assessment and an examination of already published or documented files, case determinations, reports, videos, that type of thing. It's a content analysis. It's a secondary analysis of all the evidence that would be, if we apply that to an expert witness or a police use of force case or any civil liability or a criminal case as far as that goes, as well as histography, which is the study of historical archival information and archival documents, such again as what we would find in litigation that would be complaints, incident reports, investigation reports, autopsy reports if it's a death, videos that may be body-worn camera or surveillance camera or dash cam videos, dialogue between the officers and the subject that may be being arrested or being detained, or force that was being used. So it's a combination of those things. What I call a trilogy, bringing a triangulation, I should say, bringing all these disparate different types of pieces of evidence and going through the content and cross-referencing, cross-checking information as it pertains to a particular topic, such as we looked at in this particular incident.
And the method, would you say, is more important than any particular result that you come to?
Oh, yes, yes.
At this time, I'm going to turn to Dr. Ross as an expert in the field of law enforcement use of force, in custody deaths, and law enforcement encounters with persons of diminished capacity.
Does the state wish to question the witness?
No, I don't object to his testimony. I'll let the jury decide whether he's an expert or not.
Very well, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, the witness may testify as expert in regard to the issues of law enforcement use of force, in custody death, and other general areas relating to criminal justice.
Dr. Ross, since we retained you as an expert in this case, you've had an opportunity to review a great deal of what we call discussed materials relating to this case. Is that right?
Yes.
Would you detail for the jury exactly what those materials are?
Yes. I reviewed the Georgia Bureau of Investigation reports, which there were numerous, I think was over 2,000 pages, as I recall. Incident scene photographs, the County of Washington, Georgia 9/11 dispatch transcript and 911 call, the Washington County Emergency Medical Service pre-hospital care report, the autopsy report and autopsy photos of Mr. Eurie Martin by the medical examiner, Keith Lehman, various videos by dash cam of Deputy Howell, Sergeant Copeland, Deputy Scott, cell phone video by Isis Tillman, body-worn camera video of Ronnie Wiggins, synchronized video of Howell, Copeland, Tillman, and Scott cameras, the taser data printout, the training records of Sergeant Copeland, Deputy Howell, and Deputy Scott, the Georgia Public Safety Training Center training course program on use of force, de-escalation, options for gaining compliance, February 2017, the Washington County Sheriff's Office policies, SOP Standard Operating Procedure 14-6, dealing with persons of diminished capacity, dated August 1st, 2014. A second policy, Chapter 10.1 through 10.5 series on the use of force, August 1st, 2014, and the Washington County Emergency Medical Report, as well as other additional transcripts from various hearings and trials.
And was there anything that you asked for that we refused to give you in your review of this case?
No, sir.
And was there anything more that you thought you needed to see in order to get a fuller picture of this particular case?
No, sir.
And without, were those materials sufficient for you to form an opinion in this case?
Yes.
And the Middle District
They did.
And you told them that, what did you tell them?
That I appreciate the invite, but I'd already been hired and retained by your office.
They didn't know that before.
I guess not, sir, no?
What I'd like you to do is, find first about Deputies Howell, Sergeant Copeland, Deputy Scott, and the kinds of decisions that were made, or the action taken by them in their encounter with Mr. Martin on that day.
Okay.
So did you have, an overarching opinion in this case about how they responded to Mr. Martin?
Yes, from reviewing all the materials in the case file, it was a dispatch call. There was 3 deputies on patrol that afternoon, evening in Washington County, Deputy Howell, Sergeant Copeland, and Deputy Scott. And when a call goes out, if you're complaining in a call, public expects someone to respond. And that's pretty practical in law enforcement. In fact, if an officer who was dispatched to a call for service, and if they don't respond, they can be terminated. They can be suspended. They can be disciplined. So
What about in the middle of a call, someone doesn't want to talk?
they still have to investigate.
Got a duty to follow up?
They have to, yes. And as I understand reading materials, that in this county, the sheriff, when a call for service went out and when an officer, deputy was dispatched, at the end of the shift, there had to be a report made about that contact, and they were keeping track, recording the various contacts of deputies with citizens during a call for service. So you just can't not respond. The public, this is part of community policing. Community policing is interacting and engaging with the law enforcement agency, in this case, the county sheriff's department, with counties who are outside the city limits. And when they have a need for assistance, when they want a deputy to check up on someone, there's a principle called a community welfare, kind of a welfare, community, caretaking welfare that goes on. And so if someone were broken down on the road and they called for service, you would expect a police officer to show up to assist in any way he or she could. And in this case, that's what Deputy Howell did. He was dispatched to check on a call by Cyrus Harris. We listened to the call this morning already, previously, and dispatched Deputy Howell to check out this particular complaint in particular individual, Mr. Martin.
Let me take a moment with you to say, all right, so we listened to the 911 call. We knew what type of, what was being communicated to Deputy Howell. What type of information did Deputy Howell have?
Very limited. And it just said that you need to check out an individual, I think as I recall hearing it and reading materials, a black male, about 50 years of age, about 6'2", wearing shorts. They didn't know if they had a top on or not, or shirt on or not, and was walking on the side of the road. And that was let me just add to this. Generally, officers get very limited information on any call, on any dispatch. It's not until they get on location do we actually see what actually is going to go on or what the call may actually entail. And it can totally change from the moment of the dispatch call to the deputy by the time the deputy gets on call to that residence, or in this case, out in the county somewhere.
You didn't know that Mr. Martin had been walking about 20 miles from there.
Oh, no, he did not know
You
that.
didn't know that Mr. Martin may have been seeking water from Mr. Harris.
No, he did not.
You did know that someone unknown to Mr. Harris had gone into his yard.
That's correct.
All right, so I want you to detail for me exactly what you gained from the materials you reviewed with regard to the first interaction between Deputy Howell and Mr. Martin.
But just looking at that phase of the incident, my impression was that Deputy Howell responded as he was trained, as we would expect a law enforcement deputy to respond. Went up to, drove near and by the Mr. Martin on the road, saw Mr. Martin on the road, and rolled down the window and began to converse with him, which I would expect any law enforcement officer to say, you know, who are you? Do you need assistance? What is, you have a problem? Is there a trouble? Again, he didn't know anything. There's a lot of unknowns that the officers do not have. A limited call, and then trying to determine through their investigation what is the issue that may be going on in this particular case. So he sees Mr. Martin walking on the roadway, and he did stop to try to talk to him, and that didn't go very far.
And what specifically do you know about that particular interaction?
I believe as reading materials that Deputy Howell asked him, you know, can I help you? Who are you? Are you in trouble? Do you need anything? And Mr. Martin conveyed, he says, who are you? And then continued to walk away from Deputy Howell, who was still in his patrol car.
Do you understand him to have said, who are you, in a way that was friendly?
No, as I recall reading material, it seemed to be in an abrupt, kind of condescending, threatening way.
And from reading materials, what do you glean was Deputy Howell's reaction to that?
It would place, and I think it did with Deputy Howell, an officer on alert. It's like officers have a sixth sense. This is not going to go too well, and he did exactly what he would train and what I would train an officer. If you have a situation like that, call for backup. Oftentimes we train officers to wait if possible. I hear it over and over. It's in the training curriculum. We've trained this for 40 or 50, 60 years. Don't get yourself in jeopardy, and don't try to push something, and don't try to cause more havoc than what is there. Wait for a backup. And in this case, I thought it was prudent that he did that. He followed his training. He followed his impression of that contact with Mr. Martin. And the double issue here was Deputy Copeland was a sergeant, was a supervisor when he fished. So not only do we have backup, but now we have a supervisor that ultimately showed up. So in my mind, that's good decision making. There's various decision points throughout this whole incident, and that's one of the first ones.
Do you know anything about the traffic on this particular road at that time?
Yes, as I recall, reviewing the material and seeing the videos, there was construction on other roads throughout the county, and they were being detoured, and so this particular road, D-Step, was heavier traffic than normal because of construction in other places around the county, and they were all being detoured. And as I counted during this whole period of time, I believe there's 15 to 20 vehicles that were going up and down that county road.
So it's more heavily traveled than normally would be.
Yes.
And was your understanding that Deputy Howell knew that?
I believe he did, yes.
And Deputy Howell's in what type of car at this time?
Model and style, it was a patrol vehicle, marked patrol vehicle with overhead lights on it.
And did he activate any of his equipment after his initial interaction with Mr. Martin?
Yes, he turned around, he radioed for backup, and as I recall, he turned his vehicle around and followed Mr. Martin from a safe distance and activated his overhead lights, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, it will alert oncoming motorists when you're coming either towards the vehicle or behind the vehicle to proceed with caution, to slow down. And secondly, it would help to protect Mr. Martin, who was just several yards, 20 yards, 30 yards ahead of Deputy Howell's vehicle.
And so despite the fact that Deputy Howell gave it some time, or the supervisor had some distance between him and Mr. Martin, would he have been authorized to detain or even briefly detain Mr. Martin based on what he saw, based on what he saw?
Yes, sir, he would. He saw him walking on the road, on the shoulder of the road, off the road, in the road, on the fog line, and at that point, yes, he could have, absolutely.
But he used his discretion and did not do that this time.
Yes, and I think that was a wise decision.
Okay. And is it your understanding from reading materials, he had an in-car camera system?
Yes, dash cam.
That camera
I
system,
apologize, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, he has an in-car camera system.
Okay.
Once you turn the overhead lights that are on, the blue lights, it automatically comes on. Yeah,
So we would have been able to see exactly what the camera was seeing in his car as soon as he turned on those lights.
that's correct.
For the benefit of his car.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to review that? I would like for you to review that video with us from the time that it turned on until the other interactions with Mr. Moore. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Shepard, please. Dr. Ross, you're a teacher at heart, is that right?
Yes, that was my first love.
So you're comfortable in a classroom setting, is that right?
Yes.
If with the court's permission, I'm going to invite you down here to, basically give a class based on the questions that I'm asking.
Okay.
You may step down, but just so it doesn't obstruct the jury's view.
Right, that's right. And I'm going to be in your way, I know, if I'm standing right here, so I'm not going to do that. Not in anybody's way, am I?
For reference, could you tell us which exhibit you're displaying?
This
The
is
number.
going to be Deputy Howell's dash cam, it's going to be state's exhibit. Steve, do you have that?
Sorry?
Yeah, it's going to be state's exhibit number 17.
17, thank you.
So Dr. Ross, let me go ahead and start this video, and you tell us where you're going to stop and make a comment on it. While we're waiting on that,
You can stop it right there. Yeah, you can see that, as I was talking about earlier, the dash cam is on. It's a winding road. So one of the things I always talk to officers about is when you make contact with an individual or your call for service, officers, first of all, do not get to normally select the location or the environment in which they are going to contact an individual. That's usually out of their control. And here in the environment that we have here is a country road. As I recall, it was about 93 degrees with a heat index of well over 100, July 7th, 2017. So, living in Georgia, we know how hot and humid it can be. But we also see that the environment here is a country road that swerved as a cemetery off to the right. Deputy House keeping a safe distance back. He would have his overhead blue lights on. And Mr. Martin is now on the fog line, had been following that, and goes back and forth between that area. While Deputy Howe is following him, Sergeant Copeland is coming the opposite direction as backup.
And he's called for back. Deputy Howell's call for backup is asking for backup de-escalation.
Yes, and it's a smart, not only de-escalation, but it's a good police work. If there's more than just one individual, one officer, and there's 2 or 3 or 4 other, depending on the situation, yes, 2 heads are better than 1. And the supervisor, I want to reemphasize that again, the supervisor is going to be on scene. So that is part of the de-escalation strategy.
Continue the video, please.
So if we can just stop it right there, please. So there's going to be this hill, and ultimately they're going to stop just short of the hill. So remember, there is construction on other roads in the county. Motorists are now traveling this more and coming over that slight crest and then coming upon that, that poses a risk. It poses a risk to motorists that are coming and poses a risk to Mr. Martin. And that's why Deputy Howe has his headlight or his overhead activated lights that are on. So there's a risk to the community as we speak right now, watching this whole video. Again, Deputy Howe is just monitoring and watching and observing and waiting for Sergeant Copeland to respond. You can, I know Deputy Howe could, but it's blurry with the video, makes it blurry, but yeah, you can see him.
So the weather conditions at that time, were they stable? Were they getting worse, better?
I think it was towards dusk, it was cloudy, eventually later that evening, a storm, I believe, came in later, so it was cloudy and it was dusk.
So you live in South Georgia, don't you?
Yes, sir?
You know about South Georgia summer storms.
Yes, they just pop up any old time.
Right, and it tends to get a little bit darker, is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, you perceive that, and did you perceive that in this?
yes, you can see that clearly.
So that would have made it even more risky for.
Your Honor,
motorists.
I'm going to object to the form of the question. It's leading. I've been letting it go, but I haven't heard a direct question in a while now.
So
Refrain from leading.
would that pose a risk?
Yes, it would, a safety risk to not only Mr. Martin, but oncoming motorists.
Go ahead, please.
Vehicle that goes through. That appears to be, look, that's Sergeant Copeland coming the opposite way. He has his overhead lights on as well.
Go ahead, Rick.
So why Deputy Hill went on the other side? Because Mr. Martin was on the other side of the road. And so to try to keep distance between him, he was parking his vehicle, putting in a position, that's a tactical position, to put his vehicle and Mr. Martin in between Sergeant Copeland's and his vehicle, hopefully to make the stop right in that particular area, which would allow a cone of safety, oftentimes a cone of safety or a zone of safety, by having these two patrol vehicles with their overhead lights on. And you can see the crest of the hill coming over and coming in slant ways down, and that, again, motorists are coming and don't know what's coming around that particular hill or corner.
So that's for the is that for safety of Mr. Martin?
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead, please.
Okay. So the deputies are in two fully marked patrol vehicles They have their overhead lights on, proper police work. They're in full county uniform, police uniform, so they're clearly identified as law enforcement officers. Why I had him stop it there, in his left, Mr. Martin's left hand is a can. And Sergeant Copeland is now exiting his patrol vehicle and will give directions and instructions for Mr. Martin to stop so they can talk to him.
Stop right there for a minute. So you mentioned the code can. You worked in corrections for a number of years before you went into teaching.
Correct.
So, is it possible that anything that a subject has in their hands could be used as a weapon?
Yes, potentially it's possible. Anything can be used as a weapon, absolutely.
Albeit unlikely.
Correct. So again, he walks, instead of complying, he walks on, Mr. Martin walks on the other side of the road. And so we have what's called officer presence. Not only do we have the two deputies there in the patrol car, but now we go back into teaching curriculum about approaching an individual, officer presence. By the mere presence, oftentimes you get compliance. Just depends. But not only do we have officer presence, but we have verbal direction by Sergeant Copeland, as well as a pointing gesture to, sir, stop, move over to this side. That's all part of de-escalation.
You got tasers? Tasers there.
So, describe what you saw before they went off camera and then what you saw when you heard after.
Well, as I mentioned, Sergeant Copeland was trying to verbally persuade, direct Mr. Martin to stop and to stay on this side and to move over to our left. It would have been Sergeant Copeland's right. To get off into that, that would be protected by the two deputies' vehicles. There's a car coming up that way. And he goes across, Mr. Martin crosses across the road, and as I recall reading it, you can't quite hear it, but as I recall reading the information in the file, he told Sergeant Copeland, asked him to stop. Stop, man, who are you? I'd like to identify yourself. Please stop. But he continues to walk over this particular way. Deputy Howell is following behind, and he says, tase his ass.
So, Deputy Howell had, stayed back
Yes.
a lot. And is it, would tase his ass be an unusual thing for Deputy Howell to say at that time?
It would be inappropriate, but not unusual.
Okay. And what I mean is that, was there some kind of catalyst? Do you believe that there was some kind of catalyst that caused him to say that?
Well, perhaps frustration, not knowing what's all going on with Mr. Martin, why he wouldn't stop, why he wouldn't comply. All they wanted to do was check with him, make a welfare check, stop and talk with him. He was non-compliant, non-cooperative, continued to walk away at all their commands. We have two deputies on scene now and trying to investigate the call, original complaint for the call for service. So there's more than likely, my impression would be frustration on his part.
Okay. And normally law enforcement officers don't tase someone for no reason.
Objection to the form of the question.
Rephrase.
Why do you believe that Deputy Howell would have asked for Mr. Martin to be tased that way, based on the review of all the evidence?
That's a good question. I can't get into Deputy Howell's mind. But my impression was it was frustrated, and I think it was also an alert to Sergeant Copeland that potentially that device may have to be used.
Would it have been in response to something that Martin did?
Again, walked across the road, wouldn't stop. I recall reading the material. You can't see it from this direction or vantage point, but as I recall, he kind of gave a threatening bravado with his chest towards Sergeant Copeland.
Detail that, what you...
Well, it's a behavior that kind of projects defiance or a willingness to fight or you don't want to approach me or contact me because we may get into it's an aggressive type of behavior mannerism, displaying, the behavior may display what the mindset is.
Okay, and is using that level of force, a taser, in response to that type of aggression an appropriate response by them?
Not at that time, no.
Okay, so if they had offered to do violence to that deputy, would it have been appropriate?
Yes, if he'd offer violence in some way.
Okay, meaning what you just said, which is, provided an aggressive stance.
Yes, yes. An officer does not, officers are taught, officers do not have to get hurt first, or hit first, or kicked, or punched, or shot at first before using a level of force that's proportionate to the actual behavior.
Do you think that Deputy Howell received some type of risk?
More than likely. Again, I can't get into his mind, but more than likely, yes.
All right. And even if you didn't consider the coat can to be a weapon, is it common for deputies to be injured with people who are unarmed?
Yes.
Did Mr. Martin appear to be armed?
No, other than holding the Coke can, but yes.
Go ahead, please.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Put them behind your back.
Stop it right there. Okay, I want to make a point here. This is, to me, a critical decision point and part of my perception and knowing how, I've trained officers for years, how officers are trained. This is called and classified as a tactical principle, contact and cover. And it's also somewhat described in the Sheriff's Department's policy on approaching diminished capacity. I'm sorry, we can't see this gentleman in that side of, I'm sorry. Diminished capacity policy. And there's 4 points to that policy that officers are guided in and as well as trained. When you approach someone that appears to have a diminished capacity, it's called containment, coordination, communication, and time. Okay, CCT. It integrates within the training principle that's been around since at least the early 1980s by Caliber Press, and based on a traffic stop where officers were killed in the line of duty in San Diego, California in 1984. And the principle is contact and cover. It's teamwork. It's 2 officers. In this case, Sergeant Copeland was the contact officer, the lead officer. So they worked as a team. Deputy Howell took on the role as the cover officer. Now, the cover officer is watching out for the environment. Remember, officers do not get to choose the location or the environment in which they contact someone. So he's watching oncoming motorists as well as watching Mr. Martin while Sergeant Copeland, the contact officer, is trying to have dialogue and ask him several times to stop, to put his hands behind his back, and or to get to the ground. These are all trained to concepts and dialogue. That's part of the de-escalation strategies that they had just trained by the Georgia Post required in February of 17, and this was July of 17.
Do this for me. So what type of equipment is on his belt is Deputy Howell equipped with?
As far as I recall, he was a firearm, and I don't recall if he had pepper spray or not, but I know he had a firearm, and which is part of the cover, contact and cover, he drew his firearm. And when Sergeant Copeland noticed that, he told him, holster your gun, and he did immediately.
Okay, and so Sergeant Copeland was equipped with a taser, is that correct?
Yes, sir, he was.
Does the supervisor take control of that situation?
Yes, he does. He's the contact. He's the lead officer. Now, sergeant doesn't always have to be the lead officer, but they could have had 2 deputies. But in their training, and what this speaks to me is, and why I'm emphasizing it, to me, this is textbook police work, and they've done this before. This is not formed from, it wasn't that I'll just decide to just go up there and stand like this. This is a tactical positioning that is trained to all across the United States, in Canada, UK, Australia, cover and contact. It's been around for many, many years. As I recall, Deputy Howell did not carry a taser. He was a taser instructor, but he did not carry a taser.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
Yeah, we didn't quite catch it. But
We can rewind if you want.
just slightly go back, just right there. All right, he moves. So during this engagement, this contact, Mr. Martin starts to take does take a posture of a defensive stance, like a fighting stance. In other words, weaker foot up, power base behind. And as I read materials, he had a clenched fist. That would signal to the officers, to the deputies, we gotta be on our alert. We gotta be on guard, because now it's gone from, he won't stop crossing the road, we're following him, we're in a contact and cover, we're following our policy, we're trying to have dialogue with him. And the other thing here is a tactic, time is a tactic. You don't often hear that in police work. But now it's being trained more and more and more over the last 10, 15 years, using time to try to slow things. That's part of de-escalation. It's not to rush. It's not to pressure. It's not to push. All the deputies here are trying to do is get information. And now Mr. Martin takes a defensive posture, which now elevates, escalates the encounter, the confrontation. But they're trying to use time as a tactic to try to, steady this, calm this down, but it's not working.
Let's talk about time again. We're about 3 minutes and 27 seconds into the video. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And the first 3 minutes of that, was it just Deputy Howell sitting in the car?
Well, it was him observing and following him and being on the radio, as I recall, and with his overhead light on, activated his blue lights, and observing and watching him.
And in your research, would you consider 3 minutes to be a lifetime in policing?
Oh, yes.
Tell me why.
Well, it just seems like time can either go by quickly or it can go on, it feels like we're sitting here all afternoon. So the timing of all that, time is a tactic, but also I know Deputy Howell probably, I don't know, it was in his mind, but it's like, come on, let's get here, back up, get here, because this is going on, and we're gonna follow him all the way to wherever he's going. So yeah, time becomes an issue, and it feels like time is just going on and on and on. Things begin to kind of slow down for these deputies.
Go ahead, please.
Put your hands behind your back. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. You're going to be
What the deputies are doing right now?
They're trying to get him on the ground in a more cooperative position where it's a position of control. So first they've asked him to put his hands behind his back, and why would you do that? So that we can come around and hopefully restrain, control and restrain.
Or warning a de-escalation tactic?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, it's letting them know what, if you don't comply, this is what we're about ready to do. So it's giving a warning to not only the individual, Mr. Martin in this case, but it's also, as Sergeant Copeland is the contact officer, alerting Deputy Howell, warning him that, okay, it's about ready to probably use some level of force. So it kind of has a dual purpose, a dual-fold objective.
Your estimation is Mr. Martin continuing to be defensive?
Yes, he's defensive and defiant, and his body posture, obviously in a bladed fighting stance, would imply and infer to a reasonable officer that we're not just gonna go hands-on, that something's about ready to we're gonna get into a physical altercation of some sort.
Please continue.
Hey, get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. No. Hey, no. Get on the ground. Hell no. Get down. Roll over.
Stop it. At some point, I know it's probably garbled, but I recall reading or listening that they warned him about the taser being used. And that's typical. That's typical for everybody to know that the taser's about ready to be used.
What about the, after Mr. Martin has tased, the sounds that he's making, are those typical?
Yes. Sometimes people will scream, sometimes people say nothing. But there's some, depending on where the probes would land, depends on the reaction and the response.
Now, Dr. Ross, be honest, did you scream when you were tased?
I yelled, but I've seen other people, to be honest, not say anything, but feel and just kind of murmur, but not just yell like you would at a haunted house or something.
So this is kind of common.
This is common, yes.
You gonna comply?
Stop it for a minute. Now you hear crackling. That's disconnect. That's not a good connection of the taser. So while it's being a trigger pull, when you pull the trigger of a taser, the officers are instructed to have a 5-second trigger pull. 5 seconds. If it's a really good connection, you won't hear anything. It'll be silent. But if it's crackling, it means that there's a disconnect. The wires are very, very thin. They're insulated copper, and they're like fish line. So they can easily break or easily be popped out or pulled out. And in this case, they were pulled out. And even though there may be a trigger pull there for several seconds and ongoing, you hear crackling. There's no current, there's no electricity flowing through the wires into the body at all, period.
So how do you know that from your training?
Yes,
And you're training as a training officer?
yes, yes. And they're still giving verbal direction. That's the whole thing about police work. Officers are told all the time, before we do anything, talk. During an altercation where force has to be used, continue to give commands. And after the person's controlled and restrained, continue to give instructions and commands. And you hear that throughout this whole altercation.
What the heck going on, bro? What the heck going on, bro? What the heck going on? What the heck going on? Get out of the way. What the heck going on? What the heck is going on?
If we could stop it. Now, this is unusual. Very rarely would an individual be tased and be able to ride through it and then get up and stand up and now walk up a hill 100 yards to an empty lot.
So what is it your understanding that has just happened here? He's been tased, and then what does he do?
Sergeant Copeland used the taser. As I recall looking at now with the taser, there's a data printout. Axon, many years ago, when they designed the taser, it helps to hold officers accountable. It also helps to show and demonstrate how often and frequent a taser was used in any altercation or encounter like we have here. So there's a data printout, there's within the taser itself, you can take it out, software that you can put in a computer and run a data printout of when the taser was used. How many trigger pulls were pulled on a particular taser in an incident, the duration of that trigger pull, and also then the battery life. Tasers have two small three-cell volt kind of batteries like you put in a Nissan camera. They're very, very small. Okay? So what you hear is the crackling. So what we have in this particular situation, as I recall, there were 4 trigger pulls, 3 for 5 seconds and 1 inadvertent for I think 13 seconds for a total of 28 seconds. But the current was not going through because Mr. Martin pulled out the probe and the lead wires and was able to get up and walk away from the officers, which that's atypical. That is not how the taser works. If you have good contact and a good connection with the taser probe, since it shoots out 2 probes.
So you talked about the taser batteries. You're familiar with, what type of batteries it uses,
Yes.
right? Is that one of those batteries?
Yes, it is.
So go
That's
up there and show this is, how many of those are in there? 2,
Now down. Going on. Now down. Going on.
So we're still using the principle, the concept, contact and cover. Deputy Copeland is following behind here to observe and watch him. And Deputy Howe's in the middle of the road.
I want to back up with you here. So, Mr. Martin, does he do anything on the ground with regard to the taser probes? Where do the taser probes go?
The taser, now, the target, if the preferred target, let's go back, if I can digress for a minute. The preferred target is in the back. And you want to split the belt line, the hemispheres of the body. But it's also can be used in the front. And the target in the front is below the sternum and then the upper thigh, so it splits the belt. That's the concept, that's the principle. The torso with the legs.
Use me as an example here. So I'll stand right here and you point to on my back where the taser would be most effective. If you can get to that. From here down to here. This region. Could there be obstructions? Oh, yes. Clothes and Carhartt jackets, wintertime sweaters, t-shirts, whatever.
And in the front, again, the target is below the sternum, the upper region of the pelvic bowl area, away from the genital area, the pelvic area. And so, in this case, sometimes what happens, if you have a dynamic situation, an individual may move.
Is Mr. Martin moving around? in this
Yes, he
particular area?
is. And so they ended up, 2 probes are shot out with lead wires. They're very small, tiny wires, as I mentioned, like fish line. One went in the lower part of the elbow, right about the forearm, and one went into the lower part of the bicep.
So we've
About 4 to 5 inches spread probe,
Okay.
yes.
Would that have been the most effective place for it to go?
No,
That's not necessarily Sergeant Copeland's fault that it went there.
no, it happens. Confrontations can happen. It was enough to get Mr. Martin's attention. He did go down, but the taser is designed for temporary muscle control issues, to lock up. Not to go unconscious like you may see in a movie or a show or some TV thing, and it doesn't make you go unconscious. Those are all myths. But here, this was to have regional muscle control. And the better target preferred is in the front, which I've already described, and here with moving the hand, so the arms, the first probe went in the upper forearm and then the lower bicep. It did cause Mr. Martin to physiologically and physically react, went to the ground, but he was able to pull the prongs out. Now, that's untypical, that's atypical.
Is that concerning?
Yes, it is, very alerting. Well, in a minute, there's about 600 volts. The probes that go through the epidermis of the skin, about 600 volts. And normally, that's enough for most people to comply. I've had it. All right, no, I don't need to see that again, and I will comply. I'll turn over and put my hands behind the back like they'd already asked him. But when it pulled it out, that would show a high threshold of pain. And with Mr. Martin's perhaps behaviors and thinking capacity at that point, he has a high tolerance for pain, and that would be concerning to the deputies that he's just received the taser. He's able to pull it out, and not only that, stand up and now walk. I measured this, it was 100 yards up the hill to the lot that they're going to end up in, the open lot area.
So with regard to taser probes, on the end, is there something that they can stick it onto or into the skin?
The probes have a little fish hook,
Okay.
and those are the probes or prongs that sometimes people call them, and they actually penetrate in the skin very, very superficially, but enough to actually get into the skin. And then the current is then delivered to that region. Now notice, in this case, it was in the left arm. Wasn't in the front, wasn't even close to the heart at all. It was in the left arm.
So he just takes
Pulls them out.
fish hooks and rips them out. of
Pull
the
them
skin.
out.
Okay. Why would that be concerning to a deputy?
Again, pain tolerance, wanting to continue to fight. I mean, a whole host of things were going through your mind. Because typically, if you use a taser, 95% of the time, 95, I mean, I'm just estimate, people will go to the ground and that's the end of it, comply. And you don't have to use a taser again, and you control and restrain an individual and then give them medical treatment.
So he saw in other videos, and you saw in other videos that when he was on the ground, Deputy Howell put hands on him. Is that right?
He was going to try to roll him over the first thing he wanted to do was get in control. So he went to the ground. The objective, the stages or the steps or the phases is once an individual goes to the ground, you want to roll him over to a prone position, control, and handcuff as quickly as possible. And that's the whole thing behind a taser. And people, I don't think, understand or have not been taught on this, that the whole reason we use a taser as a preferred in this kind of situation, it's safe for both the officer and the individual. Secondly, it shortens the confrontation time span. It shortens it up so we don't have to roll around and wrestle and do all those types of things. Okay? It then allows you, thirdly, to control an individual, and then fourth, restrain the individual so we don't have this long, prolonged type of struggle. And it shortens it down, and it's safe for both the individual and the officer. And that's the whole premise and objective behind using the taser, and that was the objective here, in my mind.
They're walking up the hill right now. After an incident like this, what have you seen other law enforcement officers do that may or may not be prudent?
They wouldn't even got up the hill. They would have tackled and jumped right on, in this case, Mr. Martin or an individual. They would have gone right in and started going hands-on.
Why is that not prudent?
Well, now, because again, to me, and how I train this, I would never train somebody in this incident, using this isolated incident and the totality of the circumstance and the conditions here, not to go hands-on. Because again, taking out the prongs sold a high threshold of pain. So empty hand control, probably not gonna work or be effective because of the type of situation that we have here. But, so what they're doing is they're backing off, they're de-escalating, giving time. Let's see if we can get Mr. Martin, let's talk to him, get him to dissuade, calm him down, back him down a little bit here. So they're using time as a tactic again, which is part of their training, part of their police, they're not, I wouldn't dare say that this is how they're experienced. I don't know that I can say that, okay, they're in their mind processing stage one, but this is how the officers are trained. And that's concerning, but pulling the prongs out. But I know many officers, I wouldn't advise it, now we had a pig pile. And they're gonna get hurt, and the individual's gonna get hurt, and that's not what we want. The vehicle.
They're shot now. Do you think it would be better to move on to Deputy Scott's video?
Probably, yeah. Yes. No. So one thing, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Deputy Hal, twice, and we heard the audio this morning already from the dispatch, as got up, Mr. Martin got up, and as they were walking up the hill, at some point in there, we heard Deputy Hal tell Deputy Scott to step it up. It was over the radio. And then, I don't know, a couple of seconds or half a minute later, said he's been tased and he's still fighting.
Would it have been reasonable for Deputy Howell, or not Deputy Howell, but Deputy Scott, to rely on his fellow officers' explanation of what had just happened?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's how, I mean, you're going to get short information on the radio. He's not there. They're trying to give him, everybody's under stress in this situation. So you're not going to have this full-blown articulation and narrative on the radio about what just transpired. One, it's urgent, step it up. Deputy Scott would understand what that means. And secondly, he gave at least brief information about he's been tased and he's still fighting. So that, again, you get limited information, but that's enough for him to go, I better get there. Because this guy's not, it's not one under control and restrained and, control. We didn't hear that. It's other information. I'm not sure where Deputy Scott was in the county, but it's a big county, and he was a little ways away. So, excuse me, Deputy Scott got the radio, step it up, still fighting, with Taze still fighting. He's proceeding, had overhead lights on, trying to get there quick. He pulls in, and his dash camera video is on, camera is on, and this is what he observed as he pulls into the vacant lot here. He sees Sergeant Copeland. I would, as you see on the video, that's what he sees at the back behind. Now, Mr. Martin will continue to move around. Deputy Howell's over here to the right. They still have the idea, the concept of contact and cover. Deputy Scott will now get on and behind, but he sees Mr. Martin's posture there, hands on his hips, his behavior there, and he'll continue to move around, and Deputy Scott gets out, and then he'll approach Mr. Martin.
Tell me what you can glean from Mr. Martin's posture right now.
Aggravated, offensive, defiant, actively continuing to resist, control and arrest from these two deputies, and as we'll see, a third deputy as he moves on.
This appears to be more passive resistance, but that's resistance nonetheless, is that correct?
Correct. But it's also with the hands on the hips shows, again, it's passive, but it's also showing behaviors also give a guidance into the mindset of an individual. So again, even though Deputy Howe said it over the radio, has been tased, he mentions that to Deputy Scott as he gets out of his vehicle and approaches the three of them there, advises them again.
Get him again. I gotta get him in the fight. You want to get on the ground. Another round. Get on the ground.
So again, they're giving him commands, instructions to get on the ground, using verbalization, using time, and not compliant. So Deputy Scott reaches up. I mean, he's there, I don't know, 20, 25 seconds approximately. But knowing what had happened somewhat before, getting a call for this situation, he's been tased, still fighting. Now Deputy Scott is there and sees with his own eyes, and again, wants to get the thing under control.
Would it not be wise of the three of them there to go hands-on at that point?
No, I would not ever recommend that at all. Again, wrestling match is going to happen, and somebody's going to get hurt. And pain tolerance, at least Sergeant Copeland and Deputy Howell know that he's already pulled the prongs out of his arm. That already is enough. Now, I don't want to have to get in a physical altercation. No one wants to get in a physical altercation if you can't help it.
The taser is designed to avoid that?
That's what the whole objective is, as I mentioned earlier, what the taser is designed to shorten the confrontation time span safely for the officer and the individual. And Deputy Scott deploys his taser in the back, which is the preferred target, and to try to try to get this resolved. It's been going on for a period now.
Did he have any obstructions to where he was trying to tase Mr. Martin?
Yeah, there was a sweater draped around Mr. Martin's back of his neck, so he lifted it up so he could get a better connection with the prongs, and the prongs hit in the upper and lower back. Stop it right there. So Mr. Martin feels, obviously, that the prongs enter the body. He spins around, which is somewhat of a typical reaction, but you can see the elbow flaring around like he's taking a punch, in my mind, towards Deputy Scott.
So normally if you get what's called a good taser spread between back and the buzz, what is normally supposed to be?
The individual will usually go face down or backwards, like a plank.
Neuromuscular incapacitation?
Yes, NMI, neuromuscular, it's a temporary control of the muscle regions.
And these deputies weren't able to achieve that with the two tasers before?
Correct.
Is that what you mean by it vastly shortens the encounter?
Yes.
The inability?
The confrontation time span, absolutely.
Oh, man. Get him down. Get down. Roll over. Roll over. Roll over now. Roll over now. Roll over. It'll stop when you roll over. Roll over. Roll over. Go other way. Bring him. Roll over. Roll over now. Ass ain't back. Oh, God. Oh, no. Okay, let's go, Michael. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. I got this one. Oh, God. You gotta get his other one. He's on it. He's on it.
From your view of the materials, were they able to get any handcuffs on him right away?
Yeah, yes, you heard the command, get on the ground. Well, why is that important? Because that's how we control individuals that can be combative and fighting with the officers. We're gonna put them in the prone position.
Prone position meaning?
On their stomach. You don't want to try to put someone on their back, or what's called a supine position, because that now affords all the limbs to hit and the legs and the knees to kick the officers, because eventually, in almost every situation, if it's possible, we want to handcuff someone with their hands behind their backs. Okay? And to facilitate that, because that gives more safety for the officer, more safety for the individual, is controlled and restrained, and in order to do that, you need to place them on their stomach, what's called the prone position. And that's why these deputies are instructing Mr. Martin to go down to the ground and put his hands behind his back so that they can put the handcuffs in a safe position. And during the course of that, Mr. Martin does go down. I think he's on his side for just a short period, and one arm is, I believe it's either his right arm or left arm, I can't recall. It swings around, and I think it's Sergeant Copeland that's able to control and put one cuff on.
Okay.
One handcuff of the two cuffs.
I see your handcuff. Thank you. So he's got one handcuff, so let's just say on this.
Right,
Okay, so one is free, is that right?
right.
So
So
tell
now,
me what you got.
we put this, I'm not gonna put them on me, but we got one here controlled, right? Yeah, the expert got controlled in the handcuff. Boom. But now, we have a weapon. Unless we control the other hand and bring it around to put the handcuff on, that hand gets around, now we have a weapon. A metal object weapon that can be used against the officers. And I've actually seen it in prison where an officer got a cuff on and the prisoner jerked his hand away, and in the course of doing that, the officer got the single bar in the eye socket, which was a significant major injury to that officer. So now, we got one hand, but the other hand is pinned underneath Mr. Martin's stomach, diaphragm, pelvic area, and that's what they're trying to get the other hand out to facilitate control and the restraint, and they're not gonna let go of this handcuff, because if they do, now we've got a weapon, potential weapon.
So you've got a threat to the eye.
Yes,
Threat
and
to
the other
ear,
parts of the
Threat
body.
to the ear.
Yes,
Threat to the nose.
yes.
Threat to the mouth. Threat to your jugular.
Yes.
Bring your arm out. Bring your arm out. They never run.
Eventually, they're able to, I think there's a couple more taser trigger pulls, and the wires are now being disconnected because they're rolling on the ground. Remember, very thin wires, the wires are coming dislodged. There's no current going into the body at this particular time because the wires, the prongs are dislodged, the wires are dislodged from Mr. Martin, but they're trying to drive stun Mr. Martin. And that's the, yes, it's the second methodology or delivery access system through the taser. There's the probe mode and the drive stun mode secondly.
Is it meant to punish someone?
No, it's not. It's pain compliance, and you have to really take, there's no probes or prongs that are now shot in, but it's a touching, it's what's called touch contact or drive stun. And it's pain compliance to try to, again, affect resistance and control. And they're doing that. Why are they doing it? It's repeated because it's no effect, but because there's the weapon on the wrist.
Are there other types of pain compliance that law enforcement officers use?
Oh, yes. Wrist locks, this, pressure points to anywhere in the anatomy, knee strikes. All right, so there's lots of other, a takedown could be considered, but using empty hand control for pain compliance. To some extent, a pepper spray could be considered because it comes burning of the eyes, but it's more of an elevated use of force.
In your experience and research, do those other types of pain compliance methods have a higher injury rate?
Yeah, propensity for injury is what we call it, have a higher propensity for injury, fracturing of the wrist, dislocating the elbow, dislocating the shoulder if it's a takedown or if it's an arm bar or a bent arm bar that's being used here. They didn't use any of those. There was no neck restraint used in this particular situation. There were no strikes. There were no knee strikes, hand strikes, leg strikes, no pressure points used by these deputies.
It took them some time to try to get that arm out, is that right?
Yes, as I recall, 2, maybe 3 minutes, somewhere in there, I'm estimating.
Okay. And it's hot outside.
Very hot. Like I
And-
said, hot 93 with high heat index.
These deputies are struggling with someone who's resisting.
Yes, actively fighting and resisting.
Now,
Thrashing.
We mentioned, encounters with people with a diminished capacity. That could mean mental health, is that right?
Could be.
Could it mean other things?
Could be drugs, illicit drugs, or it could be an individual, cocaine or methamphetamine or PCP or a host of all different types of illicit drugs. It could also be an individual that hadn't been taking their prescribed medication for a period of time, chose to select not to take medication. Or it could be another third or fourth variation. It could be someone who was taking their medication and high on some other type of illicit, illegal drug.
But there's no way for these deputies to know exactly what they're doing.
Absolutely not. All they're dealing with is behaviors.
Do the signs of mental health crisis and drug intoxication sometimes overlap?
Yes, they mimic each other.
Okay.
They can.
Eventually, they were able to get that all out.
Yes.
Tell the jury how.
As far as I understand, my impression was after several attempts of the taser and the drive stun, which were ineffective, it was basically, again, because the contacts were not good because of Mr. Martin's rolling and moving around vigorously. I can't remember who said to get their collapsible baton out. Officers carry an expandable, or what's called a collapsible baton. It will close down to about 6 to 8 inches, and when you forcefully extend it, it comes out to about 22, 23 inches. And they did not use it to strike, but they used it as a fulcrum, as a pry bar. Hand here, as I understand it, went through here to help move this hand back. That was pinned underneath the diaphragm chest area, pelvic area, and that was used. I can't remember exactly which deputy did that. Maybe Deputy Howe, don't hold me to that. But it came back behind the back, and they were finally able to get him secured in both handcuffs.
Okay. And they got up there was also,
Correct?
and what position did they leave Mr. Martin?
In the prone position, and Deputy Scott monitored him.
Okay, is that an acceptable position?
It is. It can be.
I think you had talked last week in Las Vegas about that particular position, is that right?
Yes. That, depending on the situation, that or on the side or sitting up, based on what's safe and what is unique and a variable for that particular situation, yeah. But to monitor.
So once he was handcuffed, did the deputies cease, all force against him?
Yes, and that's an important issue. I have constantly taught that principle for 25 years, at least. That once an individual is controlled and restrained and force no longer is necessary, stop using force. The subject or the individual has stopped resisting, they're controlled and restrained, and the officer needs to back off and stop using force. That's a use of force principle that's solid on any given legal decision in any training curriculum and any field application.
Based on all of these materials that you've reviewed, I mean, do you believe that these officers acted taking Mr. Martin into custody?
Oh, absolutely, yes, sir, I do.
No other questions at this time?